Hey everybody, Steve Bowman here. Thanks for joining me. Hey, today we continue our series called Songwriter Essentials. And today uh, I'm calling this video Changing the Color of Our Melody. And basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to take one note, in this case an F sharp, and I'm going to show you that by keeping that F sharp note as a melody, but underneath it changing the chords, the actual colors that you're hearing in that F sharp are going to change depending on which chord we're playing. And it's going to be, the chords will be from very simple, like a chord tone, like a root or a third, to very complex, like a sharp 9 or a sharp 11. And you'll hear, as those chords start to change, you're going to hear sort of the thickness and the richness of the chord change as well. And then after I go through that and I play those for you and you hear it, I'm going to show you how to apply that in a real sense of creating a melody. Okay? All right. So basically, again, I'm going to take one note, F sharp, as a melody note. I'm going to start on F sharp as a bass note, and I'm just going to go up chromatically, up an octave, until I get to the higher F sharp, and then I'll end on the first chord. Okay. The one thing is the F sharp has to relate to each one of these roots in a proper chord. So you have to make sure that when you're doing this, that you're creating a chord that note, whatever note you choose, is going to work with. Okay. So I'll go through and I'll tell you exactly which chords I'm picking, because this F sharp has to relate to each one of these chromatic notes some way, either as a chord tone or as an extension, but it has to fit within the context of the chords that are below it. All right? Okay, so here's my F sharp. And I'm going to start on the F sharp root, right? I'm just going to play an F sharp major chord. So you can hear that it's just the root of the chord. So it works, but it's nothing special. If I go up from F sharp to G, now that F sharp becomes a major 7, and you can hear the richness of the chord kind of change. If I go up half step to A flat, now that F sharp, which actually is a G flat now, inharmonically the same note, becomes an A flat 7. It becomes the 7th of that chord. If I go up another half step to A and I play it as a minor chord, then it's like the F sharp is like an A minor 6. I can also play it as a major chord. So it becomes like, if I put an A, then it becomes like an A6-9 chord, which is a really rich sound. If I go to B flat as a root, that F sharp becomes the sharp 5. So now it's an altered sound. And on that, if I want a 7th, I could either add a major 7th on top, or I could add a dominant 7th on top. If I go up to B in the root, it's the 5th of the chord, so it could either be B minor or it could be B major as well. Again, it's a chord tone, so there's not much kind of richness to it, but it still works. If I go up to a C with this chord, now we get really rich, and it becomes a sharp 11 if I put a 9 on top of that. C major 9, sharp 11, it's a really beautiful chord. If I go from C to C sharp, now it becomes like a sus chord, C sharp sus. If I go to a D root, major 7th, then it becomes like a third. Could also make it D7, would still be the third of that. From D, if I go up to E flat, then I could use that F sharp again. Inharmonically, it'd be the same as G flat. So at that point, it's a minor third. It's a chord tone. But I could also make it an E flat 7, sharp 9. And then that becomes the sharp 9 of the chord. Again, it's an altered extension, altered tension. So you can hear the color of that F sharp now really changing, especially when you go from here to here. The sound of that melody is really different. On an E chord, could be an E major 9, could be an E9 dominant chord. It could also be, which is my favorite, an E minor 9, which is a beautiful sounding chord. And then the last example, which is really intense, would be the F sharp again. It would be inharmonically a G flat. So I'm playing an F7 chord. So that G flat would be the flat 9. So now it's an altered tension. We're altering the 9 to be flat. So you can hear how each one of those chords brought out a different color in the melody. And so that's the idea. Now, to relate it to a melody, let's say I'm going to keep that F sharp as my primary note. I'm going to add extra notes, but that's sort of always going to kind of be the foundation. That's where I'm going to come back to, is that F sharp. It's going to be the most emphasized note, let's say. So I'm going to come up with a progression. I'm just going to use a couple of the chords. So let's say I take the first chord, the F sharp major, just a triad, and then I play the second chord, G major 7, and then let's say I go to the E flat 7 sharp 9 chord, and then I'll go back to the F sharp major chord. So with that progression now, I'm going to, again, emphasize the F sharp, but I'm going to add a couple notes. So let's say for the F sharp major chord, I'm going to go A sharp, F sharp, okay? So ba, ba, and then I'm going to go F sharp, G sharp, and then on the G major 7 chord, I'm going to go A, ba, ba, so A to F sharp. Again, I'm emphasizing that F sharp even though I'm playing other notes. Then on the E flat 7 sharp 9 chord, I'm going to keep that same melody, A to F sharp, ba, ba, and then I'm going to go E, and then back to F sharp for the last chord. So sound like this. Ba, 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 ba. One more time. Ba, 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 ba. So you can hear in that melody, right? I'm still basically keeping the F sharp as the primary note. So my melody, even though I'm adding some notes, the primary note is still F sharp. But that F sharp is changing colors because of each one of those chords that I'm putting underneath it. Now this was just a simple example. You can get a little bit more complex with it as well. But I would encourage you guys to experiment with it and play with it because again, it's an interesting thing to hear. Like, you know, it's the same note, but you're seeing different perspectives of that note depending on the backdrop of whatever chord you're on. So it's sort of like if you had an object that was up against a wall, that object would look different depending on what the backdrop was. So let's say on the wall you first had it as a white wall. Well, that object would bring out certain things with that white wall. And then if you went to purple, it would be different. If you went to green or black or blue, each backdrop that you put that object against, it would still be the same object, but the way you would see it would be slightly different. And it's the same with this concept of using the melody note, the same melody note, but underneath it we're going to change the chords and change the harmony. Okay? All right, so experiment with that. I hope this helped. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you guys on the next video. Thanks for watching.